Coaches across the country used the Coachpad this past season to be more efficient with their scout card prep on the weekends as well as when out on the practice field working with their scout teams. Whether you're a coach using a computer program to create cards or drawing them by hand, the Coachpad is for you. Never printing paper or stuffing a binder, clearly seeing scout cards outdoors in the bright sun, and using the coach pad on game days, syncing diagrams from the press box to the sideline were some of the features coaches enjoyed this season. This offseason, get your coach pad at thecoachpad.com to get your program ready for next season. Thecoachpad.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have Jose Licon from, and I'm probably mispronounce this even though we've talked about it already, Hugoton High School in Kansas. Coach, how you doing?
Doing good. How's it going?
Going well. Did I pronounce everything correctly? That was my
Yeah,
first.
for the most part, yeah.
Okay. The school name was my biggest worry. So that was the part we had to kind of figure out there. Um, let's start the simple part. How did you end up as the offensive coordinator at Hugoton?
Yeah, so I've been coaching here since 2019 when I got out of college, pretty much got a job here, and this is my first job. I was just an offensive line coach for the first 2 years, and then the head coach at the time left, and our defensive coordinator actually became the head coach, and he kind of promoted me to that role as offensive coordinator. So I've been doing that ever since. This is my third year overall as offensive coordinator and kind of my second year with kind of full control of the scheme and offensive philosophy.
So let's continue there. You guys are pistol flexbone. Why the pistol flexbone in general instead of maybe under center or even just a normal pistol offense?
Yeah, so we'll get into kind of the Flexbone background. I ran Flexbone in high school, so I was very familiar with that. Um, I also ran it at my second college during my playing career at Tabor College, and we ran it under center there. So it's just an offense that I know quite a bit about and had some background in. And going to the Flexbone aspect of it, um, there's a few reasons why. The footwork is a little bit easier when we get into the flex bone. We do a pivot rather than having to hop back. We had a big 6'3" quarterback, so it it was kind of difficult for him to get into center, under center, and kind of do all of those flex bone steps, especially when you go from midline to inside veer to rocket toss, all those different things. And it just helped us, maintain depth when we wanted to throw the ball, the few times that we did. But and it just makes things a little bit easier when he's reading it. Um, Makes defenses they can't really attack the mesh as well, and not as fast. It gives the quarterback a little bit faster, um, an easier read. Um, so that's kind of why we went to the pistol flex bone. I kind of took the idea from a couple of coaches that I saw. Jake Palmer, who was the coach at Fisher High School in Illinois, and then I've maintained a good relationship with Coach Brett Jones in Oklahoma. He's at Bristow, Oklahoma, so he runs a pistol flex bone as well. And we're generally from 2.5 yards, so it's a really short pistol. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You kind of still get that fast hitting midline, but then you also can get into pretty good depth for your pass game as well.
Yeah, that sounds similar. When I was at Lakewood many moons ago, God,
Mhm.
I feel old now. Because it's been over 11 years at this point. Yeah, we ran, I think at the time it called it like the ski gun, I think is what the short pistol
Yeah.
stuff was called. I think they stole, oh God, who they steal that from? Who was running the ski gun? I don't even remember. It might have been like Fair State or so. It's like a D2 or D3 college. And
Yeah.
then it's kind of created its own life. There's a bunch of people who, if they run the pistol flex bone, it's more of the true ski gun stuff instead of the deep pistol.
Mhm.
Um, I think
Yeah, I know Coach Palmer calls it the sawed-off shotgun. So
I,
It was kind of a cool name, so I kind of ran with that too.
yeah. Kind of continue with that. Like, what all do you run out of it? Because obviously, there's some things you can run better. There's some things that don't necessarily fit as well. What
Mhm.
is kind of your base package kind of look like for the pistol Flexbone?
Yeah, so we are, mostly just traditional flexbone schemes. We run midline, zone dive, inside veer, um, rocket toss, and then we run a beatback toss as well. So we're a traditional flexbone scheme team. Um, all the traditional concepts pretty much. The one thing we really haven't gotten into is outside veer. So that's kind of a play that has been difficult for us to run out of the short pistol. But everything else, man, trap, belly, all those plays we run out of the short pistol. So we're pretty much a traditional flexbone team. Um, just a little bit different style.
So I mean, you mentioned you don't do much outside view there. Why is that a problem play? Is it because of the depth? Is it just timing issues? What's kind of been what do you think the issue's been there? Just out of curiosity for somebody that looks at the pistol Flexbone and like, oh, I want to run outside here, but here's some things to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we really, when I first implemented the offense, I wanted to choose kind of a big five, and the outside veer was kind of one of the big fives or one of the plays that kind of got left out. And then we tried it a little bit, and I just didn't really like how we were meshing with it, and so kind of just threw it out and haven't used it ever since, and haven't really needed it as much as the other plays that we have.
Okay. And then, I mean, you mentioned zone dive in there as well, and we'll talk about fullback toss here in a minute. But do you find that it hits any slower, or I mean, because obviously zone dive is I mean, for depending on what variation of the flex plane you run, for some portion, the zone dive is a big part. Like you watch prior to this year, Navy, Army, zone dive was
Yeah.
a bigger part, especially um,
Yeah.
over the past couple of years. Not so much this year, obviously. And then I know some high schools that run that's day one install is zone dive. That is,
Yeah.
I've had some people on my channel give clinics. Zone dive is the bread and butter that kind of makes it go.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
what do you find any differences running the zone dive out of the pistol?
Yeah, so if you were to ask me or some of these other pistol guys, they'd obviously say that you don't really see much difference. I mean, it's probably our most run play. We run zone dive a lot out of a lot of different formations, out of a lot of different motions, and it's just a big time play for us. Um, when I was first moving to the Flexbone, I had a lot of people in my ear telling me not to go to the pistol just because it doesn't hit as fast. Midline doesn't hit as fast. Zone dive doesn't hit as fast. They're probably right. It probably doesn't hit as fast. Um, but I think the margin is very small. And we've had a lot of success doing what we do, and it hasn't made me want to change that.
Okay. Um, from a blocking standpoint, is there any major changes that you've had to do? Like obviously, you're not super far, you're not in the shotgun. So like
Yeah.
you're not 5 yards off the ball. So
Hmm.
there's not a lot of major adjustments you probably have to make blocking scheme wise. But I know like when I talk to oh God, was it Todd? No, not Todd. One of the Munkin brothers. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. Not Jeff, not Todd. There's like five of them. So, and he made the switch from under center to more shotgun. And there's some changes he had to make, particularly with the mesh stuff and back alignment. Is there anything like major that you've had to adjust? Because you are off the ball. It's not necessarily hitting as quickly, but you have more time to read, and it's a little easier to read things. Is there any major adjustments with being in the pistol compared to the flex bone that you've had to make, whether it be blocking scheme wise or backfield action?
To be honest with you, no. We're pretty much a lot of gap scheme blocking, a lot of down, down, pull, and a lot of the things are the same things as it would be under center. Veer releasing is the same. Um, Blocking, getting to the second level, it's all pretty much the same thing. Combo blocks. Um, the being under center doesn't really affect my offensive line besides the center, the snap. So, um, and I think that makes it a little easier on him too. Not having to be under center and get a good get off, and it makes things easier for them a little bit.
Now, do you with that? Do you old school snap? Do you knuckle snap? Dead arm? Whatever you want to call it. Um, I know the 4 point snap has become a thing lately. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have your center snap and then the
Yeah, so I've had the same center ever since we switched it over to the Flexbone, and he's a really great kid, and he actually graduates this year. He was a senior, and I'm gonna miss him a lot. But I just wanted to do whatever he was comfortable with, and he was comfortable with just snapping the traditional way, one-handed snap. He did kind of get into a 4 point stance, but not always, and I was okay with him doing with what's comfortable for him. And being that close, the ball can't be super fast. It can't be a super hard snap like you would be in a traditional pistol with 5 yards away. He's cutting that distance in half. So the snap needs to be a little bit softer. It needs to be sometimes a little bit lower. So um, it we take a lot of time to work on snaps, especially in the off season in the summer. That's a big thing for us. Um, we have had issues in a couple games with some snaps, especially we had a rainy game one time, and uh, there were some issues there with a couple snaps, but the it hasn't became an issue to the point where it's wanted me to get away from the short pistol, if that makes sense. So it
okay,
it, it works for us.
okay, no, it does. And I mean, again, weather's always an interesting thing. Um,
Yeah.
sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not. Like you think certain years it'll be a problem. I mean, part of that is the center and his size of his hands and how he snaps, and the quarterback and the size of his hands, um, and size of hands is always dictated. Like I've had quarterbacks with really small hands that have no problem gripping and fumbling the ball. Like it just kind of varies depending on the kid, really.
And I'm an old line guy, and whenever there's a bad snap, the first person that I'm kind of blaming is the quarterback, and I kind of assumed that he just didn't catch it or wasn't ready for the snap, and for the longest time I was getting mad for at the quarterback, and then I figured out we were actually beating a team pretty badly, and we put in our second string quarterback in, and uh he dropped the snap as well, and he was just saying it's coming too fast. And then I realized that the center was just snapping the ball too fast sometimes, so we had to adjust and get that fixed.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like you just got to figure out what works. Sometimes it's too fast, too slow. Uh,
Hmm.
you just got to find that right. And again, it's an awkward thing when you're 2.5 yard, 3 yards from. It's a little different.
Oh yeah, and if he has a one on his inside shoulder or a head up zero, that makes it hard to
Yeah.
get a good snap.
Now, let's talk about. Yeah, I mean, I know one of the things you want to talk about was the fullback toss. I mean, why has that been? Let's start with kind of why has that been such a successful play for you guys? I mean, why have you gotten so much mileage out of it?
Yeah, so in the flex bone, everybody knows about the rocket toss where the slot goes in motion and gets to the outside. And we run that too. I love rocket toss, and I love tosses in general, any way you can run them. The fullback toss, kind of the B back toss, um, it's just been a really cheap play for us. It doesn't require a lot of practice time, and it's very highly successful in a game. Um, and it's worked for us, especially if you have a dude back there that can move. We haven't really had those traditional um, big bruisers at fullback. Um, we kind of had, some really athletic and shifty kids at the B back for us. So having them run a toss has been really successful with us. We use, motion to give us an extra blocker, and most people run their tosses and want them to get to the outside as fast as possible. But in our philosophy, I want them to get north and south as fast as they can. So if they find a seam, as soon as they find a seam, try to get north and south and try to get as many yards as they can.
Okay. What are your? There's 18 billion different ways to run toss. That's just being honest. I mean,
Uh,
I was watching a split back veer team the other day, and
yeah.
they're down blocking with their tight end and pulling their tackle. I
Mhm.
know a bunch of other guys that run toss. They'll
Yeah,
just
I've seen it quite a bit in the NFL this year too. They've been running a lot of toss
yeah.
out of, different sets. I like our condensed flexbone set, so with the two receivers in tight. Um, and then I'll put the backside slot in motion, and then we'll run toss, kind of with the lead blocker, and then two lead blockers as well with the slot and the receiver. So it's been a great play for us the past 2 years, and again, it's cheap, man. You don't have to really practice it. You don't have to spend a lot of time, and the kids like it. The kids like blocking for it. And when it hits, it looks really cool.
What is your what? On it. What is the rest of the O line? Obvious. Obviously, they're not. There's a billion different ways to skin the cat, as I was kind of saying.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
does
there is.
O line look like in terms of that? And then the
Yeah,
second
so
half of that is, what do you like run? Like, what looks do you really like running it against?
yeah, so we're mostly all traditional flexbone with a bunch of scoops. The one thing that we do a little bit differently than most, like the service academies, Air Force, or other flexbone teams, is they kind of get away with not blocking the DN. They kind of scoop the DN, and as long as the DN goes inside of them, they let him go and they get to the next level. I've tried that, man, and it just does not work for us. I guess we just seen some really good DNs, or we're just not fast enough to beat those DNs to the outside because those DNs were making plays. So our play side tackle reaches the D end, and he stays on him and doesn't let him get to the outside. And if that DN keeps running to the outside, I tell my tackle to just stay in front of him, mirror him to the sideline, and then our fullback will make a cut off of that.
Yeah,
Everybody else is scooping, so if we have a 3 and a 5 to the play side, um, the center is going to try to get in front of that 3 and cut him off, and then the guard is going to try to cut off the inside linebacker. Slot is going to get to the outside linebacker, and then the tackle um, is gonna stay on that D end.
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of that is one. I think high school kids are taught differently. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of times in college, if you're getting scooped, you're usually fighting something, or it depends on the teams they're seeing, but they're set a specific reaction. They're also taught to stay home, and then so you're allowed to get around that. Whereas in high school, there's a lot less discipline, a lot more to get upfield.
Yeah.
All defenses just play differently at high school. It just is like alignments are just different. Like I turn on some of these NFL games and they're spread and there's four guys in the box and they're still throwing the ball.
Mhm.
Because somehow the run fits still work because they have better. You have Division 1 athletes across the board. Where you try that at our level and you put four guys in a box. We're running for 600 yards at night.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's just different. Just like special teams is completely different as well. Like I've been a special teams coordinator. You don't get remotely the same looks that a college team gets
Mhm.
of alignment versus your punt or punt return or whatever. So
We also just don't have that speed, I guess. We block it the same way as we do rocket. When they block rocket toss, they kind of leave that DN as long as he um crashes inside. If he goes inside, then he's not making the play. But we tried that, man, and honestly tried it, and it just didn't work for us. So I had to adjust, and I just made the tackle, kind of scoop, overtake, and stay on that DN and make sure he doesn't make the play. And usually it's a hard block, but usually when we get that DN reached, it's a positive play for us.
Yeah. Now, I mean, everybody's a little different. I mean, what is your kind of I want to think how I word this best is, I mean, what does a typical pistol flex bone practice look like for you guys on offense? Um, where do you kind of, I mean, obviously it's different depending on what you're installing or adjusting
Mhm.
each day, but kind of what does a general practice plan look like for a pistol flex bone team?
Yeah, so this year was a little bit different. We only had 3 coaches on staff. So we had about 40 to 45 kids on the team. So I really had to, when you only have 3 coaches, you really have to think about your priorities and what's important. And I coached the offensive line, so everyday drills and kind of the fundamentals and our scheme work was kind of the most important thing for us. And then our quarterbacks and backs all worked together most of the time. And they ran, option drill. And option drill, that's an everyday thing and it takes up most of individual time, but it's necessary for the flexbone or for the flexbone offense because, it gets that quarterback to make more reads. And, the more reads a quarterback has under his belt, the better he's going to be.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about that a little bit because I mean, obviously, when you have three coaches,
Yeah.
kind of hard to run the flex bone. I mean, three coaches in general is not ideal for any
Mm-mm.
offense. Now, I think some offenses are a little easier to do that. Like if you're running
Yeah.
hardcore power T,
Hmm.
I don't think you're going to. I think you can manage with three coaches pretty easily. Like,
Hmm.
um, some spread teams too, O line, receivers, and a quarterbacks coach. But the flex bone, there is a lot of moving parts. You have wings, you have fullback.
Yeah.
There's different techniques there. Quarterback has a lot of footwork and read stuff to do. I mean, you will probably actually throw the ball a little bit, given you're in the pistol instead of our center, and then obviously you have line. How did you break up staffing duties um, throughout the season and adjust with only having three of you?
Yeah. So I mean it was a lot of work, man. It was hard. We still saw a lot of success, so I guess our work didn't go in vain, I guess. So yeah, I took the offensive line during practice, and it's just I'm an offensive line guy. I played offensive line in college, so and in an offense like this, it's the most important part in most offenses, and that's what I felt like I needed to do, and it's really been good in developing our young offensive line, and we had a lot of success with them. Another one of our assistants, he takes the quarterback and the slot backs and the fullback on. They just go all together and run their option drill most of the time during individual time. And then our head coach takes the receivers and he works on, mostly blocking stuff, but receivers sometimes go out for passes, so they got to work on catching the ball and things like that as well.
Okay. And then I mean how much did that alter also practice compared to normal from prior years? I mean, obviously you mentioned there were some changes, but how much actual adjustment did you have to actually like, okay, normally we do X, Y, Z, we can't do Y
Yeah.
because we don't have enough coaches to break up. I mean, because still, I mean, you obviously have plenty of kids to
Hmm.
run through stuff and do stuff. But how did you what adjustments had to be made because of only three of you?
Yeah, so like I said, I really had to think about what was, important, what was going to really, really contribute to our success. And before we had 5 coaches, so it wasn't like a crazy difference, but it did make a big difference. And the biggest thing that we didn't get to do as much is kind of like quarterback individual stuff. Before we kind of had a quarterback guy who kind of took the quarterbacks and worked things with them. Um, especially like throwing wise and footwork and things like that. And then we had enough guys to do, just fullback, running back specific drills. And then obviously we had our receivers coach, and it it just wasn't as individualistic this year as it has been in the past. And some people see that as a bad thing, but you can also be positive and look at it as a good thing. And you can't be selfish in this offense, because if you're selfish, then you don't know who's going to get the ball most of the time. Everyone has to do their job well in order for it to be successful. So, when most of the time you're practicing with the team, with the entire team, I think it breeds success. We also, ran a lot of our offense, on air or against bags, and then, on, just against our own scout team.
Okay. And then, I mean, obviously, do you, I mean, I'll go this direction instead. I mean, you mentioned, I mean, when we were talking that you run a lot of one word play calls. I mean, why that route instead of the traditional, I don't know, 18 veer or
Yeah,
the midline, like you know, I mean, let's be honest, like, I mean, obviously the typical spread thing is one word play calls, like Iowa to the left, Hawkeye to the right, like you
yeah.
based after like a college or something. I mean, something that has a left and right you can easily divert,
Mhm.
and then add tags onto it. Why, for you, did you go that direction instead of saying, I don't know, 28 toss?
Yeah. Um, it's just the numbers aspect, I guess. And I grew up in those types of offenses and terminologies, in high school and especially in college. Um, you're used to, the 10, 11s, 12, 13s, 14, 15s, and in college it was even more broad. We had a hundred space system, so it was like 110, 100, and then you can add a tag at the single digit number at the end, but kind of the reason why I went to just the word only terminology was the middle school coach was kind of doing that, and we kind of got together and kind of decided to just go ahead and keep the terminology the same, and do that to kind of help the kids, as an offensive play caller, especially in high school. I think you kind of have to think like a high schooler. And when you throw in a lot of numbers in a difficult offense, that's, pretty hard to learn, especially when you're the quarterback or when you're a B back or a slot back, it things get hard. And if you're throwing numbers as well as words in, it can get pretty difficult. And it was hard for me sometimes in college and high school. So um I just wanted to do something that felt comfortable for me, and then that eventually felt comfortable for the kids as well.
Yeah.
And so our play calls, I call the formation, the motion, the play call, and then if we have a tag, the tag goes out to the end. So it's not just one word, it's usually, four words.
Yeah, I get it. Like, I mean, I think it can shorten play calling, make stuff easier, but at the same time, from experience, I think it can also encourage coaches to add more tags and other things to just make the calls just as long.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. You're right there. There's definitely some of our play calls that get a little lengthy. Um, but I mean, it's just a terminology that's worked for us. Um, and it pretty much just had to do with throwing out the numbers and not being a number scheme type team.
Yeah, I get it. Like, it's just we had that conversation every year where they keep numbers, not keep numbers, do one word, not do one word, trying to figure out what's as simplistic as possible. Um, my thing always comes back to what is the simplest thing for our line that we currently have. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, it just kind of varies depending on year to year. Uh,
Yeah. And I don't know if I could share my screen with you. I could show you kind of all right. So yeah, if you can see this document, this is kind of all our terminology kind of based on the different play calls. So I know it kind of seems like we have a lot of pass plays, but um we don't really run those all the time. They're kind of quick hitters, but so these are kind of the one word system that I use to kind of call plays. So it gets pretty simple when you kind of think about it. So, belly, we just call belly. Mid, so um our mid double is just mid, and then if I want to run mid triple, I'll just call it mid trip. And inside veer is vice. That's probably one of our most called plays. Um, boss is our zone dive, so we run a tons of boss, and then our F toss is our frost. So that's kind of these first few plays are kind of our bread and butter. Jet is a play that I don't have highlighted here just because for some reason jet just hasn't been working for us, and I kind of threw it out. I still have it in my terminology, but it's just a play that I haven't found successful for us.
I find it hits so much better under center.
Yeah, I think that's the probably the reason for us too.
I
Um,
think I think part of it is I think it's you can run it with a slower kid out under center just because of how it hits. I think
mhm.
in this and this could be a wrong opinion and I could just be a bad teacher. But I think out of the pistol or shotgun, you need a better O line and a better faster. I'll phrase it that way: faster kid running the jet compared to the
Mm,
under center. The under center, I don't think you need as great blocking outside of your tight end or your edge, extra tackle, wing, whatever you want to call them, outside of your edge people. And again, he can be a slower kid. Like I've uploaded some, clips recently. It'd be vastly different from when this comes out, but um, and they're not like blazers. Like they're not. I mean, they're athletic kids, but they're not 4.4, 4.5 kids. They're
mhm.
kids that run well, but again, I think you can run it with a lower, slower kid out of under center. I think once you, and I think the other thing is you lose some of the fake action. Okay, yeah, I'm handing jet off very quickly, but now I'm also faking trap or buck or what depending on what formation you're running out of. So I think that's yeah. I do not, and I tell my OC all the time. I don't really like jet as much out of the gun, and we have that conversation quite often. So
Yeah. And then this is kind of just a picture of our motions or the different names for our motions. So our slots are H and Z, and then obviously my B back traditionally in Flexbone is the B back. Our we just call it the fullback is the F. And so the motions names are kind of based off of the H. So all H motions are going to start with an H. All Z motions are going to start with the Z, and then all F motions are going to start with an F as well. So that's, our kind of our system, our play call system, and this is kind of a play call sheet, and there's kind of a list of what a play call would look like. These are all run plays right here, and then some of our pass plays as well. So not very simple or not very hard stuff. It's a little bit different than most folks in the flex bone, but it works for us.
okay,
So I did want to show you
good.
um now that I'm able to share the screen kind of our fullback toss and why I like it so much. This is our condensed flex bone formation. So we have, the regular flex bone backfield and then our two receivers in tight. We got a 4-4 look, which is pretty much what we get a lot of. We got two walked up outside linebackers and then two inside linebackers, and then it's mostly just one high. And these corners are playing man. This is a team called Scott City, and they're very well known in the state of Kansas and a very good team. So it was fun to be able to do this. This was actually last year, so wasn't this year, but so we send this guy in motion across, and he's looking for the most outside threat. Um, this receiver was able to kind of hook this outside linebacker here, which kind of helped him to get to this corner to the outside. And there's kind of some trash here in the middle, kind of froze on me. Just let it play out. But yeah, I mean, this was kind of a big play for us.
Don't you love huddle? Sometimes it works really well on Zoom, and other times it just doesn't. It's such a
Is it not showing for you?
I'm not showing. It's just like I just love that you'll get error, it'll run
Yeah.
slow, you kind of mentioned or whatever, just because it just I don't know why. Again, there's probably somebody who's figured out why the video doesn't stream as well over Zoom, blah blah blah. But like it is what it is. Like it is. Um, but yeah. How deep is your fullback there? Typically.
So traditionally, I tell him to have their heels at 5 yards. Sometimes he gets a little bit farther than that, especially when we're trying to run a toss to the outside. Um, but I tell them to have their heels at 5 yards.
Okay. And then my last question for you before we jump off here is, I mean, obviously there is differences, and you probably still pull stuff um, from other what's the word I'm looking for? Flexbone teams. But like, and you mentioned a little bit earlier, where did you pull the pistol stuff from? Where do you recommend people who like the pistol, besides obviously reaching out to you and talking to you more and messaging you? And his Twitter bio will be in down below, so please don't hesitate to reach out to Coach. But like when you're pulling information or when you're talking to guys asking for advice, where do you kind of go for the pistol Flexbone stuff?
Yeah, so the first place I kind of looked, I found some stuff online, and I found a guy named Jake Palmer out of Fisher High School in Illinois. And I think he had some videos on like Pigskin or something like that, one of those coaching sites. And he had a pistol flexbone system that I kind of took some things from, and some terminology and some ideas from. And then, the person that's really helped me out a lot, and I've met him a few times, and he's kind of been a mentor for me, is Coach Brett Jones out of Bristol High School in Oklahoma. He's a big time pistol flexbone guy, so he's active on Twitter too. So he's a really great guy, always willing to help, and we've maintained a pretty good relationship talking about ball.
Yeah. Well, coaches, like I kind of mentioned, give Coach a follow on the Twitter or X or whatever heck, by the time this comes out, whatever it's called at this point. So give Coach a follow. Um, if you got any pistol flexbone questions, reach out to him. Trying to think if there's anything else. Obviously, check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Um, like, share, subscribe. I mean, we should be over 5,000 subscribers by the time this posts, since it's going to be a couple month difference. Um, but if we're not, like, share, subscribe, or even if we are, like, share, subscribe. Otherwise, that is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.